All right, looks like our Instagram Live is now active, and so is the rest of the live streams on YouTube and El Facebook. All right, so welcome everybody. It's good to have you on tonight. As has been already advertised, tonight is the first of the professional development seminars for this particular cohort year in our Poet Artist Development Program. Bienvenidos a todos. Like I said, for those of you that are logged on Zoom right now, you have access to the handouts. You can download them off of the chat there. You have both the brand brainstorming worksheet, which will help you with developing a business plan beyond today's session. And the other one is the artist as business owner slide deck. And that's what we're going to be mostly going over today. Si tienen alguna pregunta, you can always raise your hand and we can use the chat as well to answer questions. For anybody joining in on our live streams, of course, you're welcome to use the chat feature on whichever live stream you are watching. But welcome, everybody. So aquí estamos. Artist as business owner. I hope all of you are feeling at least a little excited about this particular session. Para empezar, I want to actually ask all of you this first question. When was the last time you engaged with some form of art or literature? Again, when was the last time you engaged with some form of art or literature? You can either raise your hands, you can put it in the chat. A ver, ¿tú qué dices, Abraham? Every day?
Every day
Yeah,
I'm hustling.
hustling, hustling. Carolyn, today, what time today? When specifically? Every day. Eso. Nabor writes this workshop session. Could you be a little more specific? There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. Last Wednesday. All right. Hmm. All day it seems, according to Carolyn. That's good. That's good. Now, follow-up question for all of you. What exactly did you engage in? What was it that you were doing that involved art or literature? I mean, I know for me it is practically all day. It's like nonstop. Okay. Carolyn writes, I like to read a poet page on IG. Cool. Angie, I saw you raised your hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think I'm in the same boat as you. I'm surrounded by art every single day of my life, whether it's like critiquing, giving feedback, looking for things or like connections and networking, and even just like really focusing on my own work. So I
Mhm.
think it's just every single thing, a little piece of everything for sure.
Oh, that's good. Eric wrote in the chat, I try for Saturdays or Sundays to immerse in new art or pick up more contemporary literature at the bookstore. And Carolyn added, and then I watched some photo vids on YouTube. Yeah, I definitely have a daily habit of engaging on YouTube, watching videos on, lately it's been more about like off-roading and, photography and landscapes and stuff. So, yeah, good stuff. Well, what if I told you? Oh, Navor wrote, both the acts of receiving and witnessing, watching, reading, viewing, and creating different mediums. Right. Yeah. And that I think brings me to my point about this particular question. We were actually just listening to music just before I got us started. And that was actually, the last time that you engaged in some form of art or literature, right? Because music uses a lot of the elements of literature. And if, especially you're watching like music videos, visual art as well. Um, but all of your answers are all correct as well, too, right? There's a lot of different ways in which we engage with art and literature. Dr. Rosie, added in the chat on September 14th at the East LA Book Fair. She volunteered and encouraged folks to buy our books, and then she walked around to appreciate others' work. All right, there's a lot of different ways in which we engage with art and literature. Art and literature are not only, you know, the things that we actively engage with, but sometimes it's also in a passive way. Like I said, for me, it's practically all day because almost all day I'm listening to music, right? And music is, again, a form of art. And it's a particular form of art that incorporates elements of literature if it has lyrics to it. So it's a little bit of a trick question here, but it's just a reminder that art really does inhabit our everyday life. You can even go so far as to argue that the chair you're sitting in or the table that you have in front of you, at any given moment, while you're working or while you're, enjoying your meal, right? Those things were designed by a designer, by a craftsman, by a person that is practicing a different form of art. So in every moment and every tool that we use, we have some connection with art. And it's a product ultimately, right? It's the product that you are using. Yes, there are designer chairs. Like I have what's considered to be a designer chair, but it's designed using human-centric design principles. So it might look fancy, but the real reason why it looks fancy is because it puts the human first. And in the end, that's a lot of the reasons why we have the things that we have, from microphones to even the phone that we use, the devices that we allow into our lives, the tools that we use on a regular basis, someone designed them using some form of art, ultimately, to tell a story, to fulfill a need, to solve a problem that we had in the moment when it was created. Phones used to have more designs than today. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Um, in terms of aesthetics, there's still a lot of design happening in them, though, especially when you think about the user interface, right? And the user experience. That's also a form of design too. So the reason why I bring up all of the different products and tools that we use on a daily basis is because whether we like it or not, we have to admit, we live in a world, not just in the US, but an entire world where capitalism is generally speaking the form of economic like the economic platform that is used, right, to give everyday items, their home, right? Access to our lives. And if we're going to talk about capitalism, we kind of need to really understand what it is. And this is according to the International Monetary Fund. Capitalism is often thought of as an economic system in which private actors own and control property in accord with their interests and demand and supply freely set prices in markets in a way that can serve the best interests of society. So, there's a couple of different things that are happening within that statement, but a couple of them, I want you to kind of respond to that. I want you to define them for us as a group because those are going to be really important for us as we start to think about ourselves as business owners. So my question to you, and it's kind of a two-part question. Part one, how do you define supply and demand? And what impact does this have on value, the concept of value? And again, you can raise your hands. Feel free to talk. Might be faster if we talk it out versus typing it out in the chat. But you're, of course, welcome to use the chat as well. So, how do you define supply and demand. And again, these are your interpretations, right? There's no right or wrong answer.
Well, in case of art, we have all these paintings who the painter has passed away, so the supply is non-existent. So the demand for it will be super high. That's why you have this, well, that and more stuff, but super crazy expensive paintings because they cannot be more done. So that's the limit of the paintings.
Yeah.
So they have to fight for them now.
Yeah, yeah, that's one way to think about it for sure. Erica wrote in the chat, supply is the product and demand is the want of the product by the consumer. Correct. Anyone else have an opinion on this? How do you define supply and demand? Or for those that already answered, what does supply and demand have in terms of impact on value? How does the supply and the demand impact value, the concept of value? ¿Qué opinan? Yes, Carolyn?
I agree with Erica in the definition of supply and demand. Supply is a product and demand is the want of that product by the consumer, like your audience. And then I would say you can change the value depending on how high the demand is. That could be how you value your art or how you value your product. I think I guess as the supplier, you can decide like what that value is.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate your input. Eric wrote in the chat, demand divided by supply equals value. I like that. Turned it into a little formula for us. Thank you, Eric. Ultimately, I think I would agree with Carolyn, right? We can set the value for our artwork, right? We can create the demand and we can set the value. And the supply, at least, in if we think about it as like Abraham was describing, it will always be limited, right? We're only one person. When we create artwork, after that, if we stop creating artwork, if we retire, if we pass away, that artwork will no longer be reproducible. We will no longer be around to create new works. So just by having that shortage of new works by us after our passing, immediately the value, the at least imposed value on our work goes up, right? That's why a lot of times you'll see things like paintings from, uh, deceased artists ultimately selling for like millions of dollars in the auction marketplace, right? Those things happen because of that in particular. But another thing to consider is that, value is something that is constructed, right? And it's constructed because of ultimately this idea, right, of things being either necessities or commodities, right? This is one of the reasons why value is sort of skewed in one direction or another, right? Um, yeah, yeah. Abraham is essentially saying, right, buy his work before you can't afford it. Um, you know, and if we were to think of art in terms of, necessity versus commodity, we might find that we're all going to have different opinions about it, right? But there's at least a few things that can be classified as necessities and can be classified as commodities. If we were to maybe add some things here to this list, what would you put under the necessities bubble, right? Under the necessities category? What are some of the items or what are some of the I don't know, services, food, water, and video games. Okay. Food, coffee, right? I'm with that. Coffee for me is definitely a necessity. Food and water, I would say, are pretty universally necessities. They are the things that people need. Video games, for Abraham, it's a necessity. For some people, that might be a commodity. Coffee, like I said, for me, that's a necessity. I get a massive headache without it. So, you know, it has a higher value in my life versus maybe for somebody that doesn't necessarily want it all the time. A designer chair is a commodity. Yeah. Designer chairs usually are marketed as a commodity, but all of us need a chair at some point, right? Even if we're okay with sitting on the floor, on the ground, a lot of times it's uncomfortable and eventually we want to sit in a chair. So where does the chair actually exist? Just as a concept. Is it possible that it could live somewhere here in the middle? Any other thoughts on this? Housing is a necessity, material need. However, capitalism commodifies it, right? Thank you, Navor, for adding that, right? I agree. A home or a shelter, definitely a necessity. And there are forces that turn it into a commodity, right? A home, a basic shelter, while being a necessity, isn't the same as like, say, a mansion, right? A five-story, multi-room structure, right? That could be considered a commodity, unless if you're housing multiple people, multiple families under one roof. Then, it lives somewhere here in the middle, right? Somewhere between a necessity and a commodity. And if you're an artist, as Carolyn noted, a necessity would be camera and film, especially in Carolyn's case, because Carolyn is a photographer. See, so going back to the idea of value, value is constructed, right? Value is placed on things, and it's placed on things based off of a lot of different forces, right? But when things really break down, you can kind of put them into the same sort of category of a necessary commodity, right? Housing is always going to be needed. It's just going to be the type of housing that you're looking for. Water versus a first edition Action Comics Superman. Yeah, water, absolutely a necessity. A first edition Action Comics Superman is probably more of a commodity. Arts tend to live in the commodity world for most people. Accessibility is necessity. However, access tech is commodified more than not for disabled bourgeoisie. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that there's a lot of things that are commodified for people, or I should say commodified in certain circumstances, um, when in fact they're absolutely necessary. Like one of the things that I hate buying the most is new glasses. I can't see without my glasses. And I am not really able to use contact lenses because of just the way that my eyes are. So every year or every like year and a half, I have to pay out of pocket for something that I absolutely need because insurance doesn't cover it. That's an unfortunate reality, you know. It's part of this capitalist structure that we live in. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the work that we create has to always live within that structure in order to have value. Because again, value is something that is constructed and it's something that we can help actually craft when it comes to our own work, right? Value, the actual word itself, is defined as the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, the worth, or the usefulness of something. That is the primary definition. And it's interesting that the secondary definition in a dictionary is going to be the material or monetary worth of something. So value, if we think about it, it's not so much about the material, the actual like money that it's worth of something, right? That definition of value is secondary to something more like the usefulness of something, right? And if we think about art and we maybe go back to things like music, right? If music makes you happy, if creating makes you happy, its usefulness and importance in your life has a higher value. And so you could make the argument to people that appreciate it just as much as you do that art is a necessity in everyone's life. It's a necessity in your life and their life. And there is where you can begin having these conversations with people about value, how you add value to their life, to their existence, because you're bringing worth to it. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this? Or a counter argument, maybe? Oh, all right. So again, it's really important to remember that as an artist, you and your artistry are both a necessity and a commodity all at the same time. It's very important to remember this. A lot of us, as we start on this journey as working artists, we will have what is commonly called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can get in the way of us sometimes trying to uh, earn a living ultimately from our artwork. We can have these little doubts every now and then creep into our mind. Even myself, who started a nonprofit and is earning a living through this, even I sometimes still have this sometimes little doubt. But it's always really important to remember this. If you need to write this down and put it up somewhere, I really encourage you to really hold this near to your heart and remember that you as an artist and your artistry are both a necessity and a commodity. They have a place and a value in this world. The moment that you begin sharing your art with the world, though, that's what makes you an entrepreneur. That minute that you start to share it, whether it be on social media or whether that be at an art fair or a craft fair, that's where you start to turn into an entrepreneur. That's where you become a business owner. And as a business owner, you really want to at the very like start of this career, set yourself up for success. Make things easy for you. Make them, structure them so that down the line you can continue to expand on your practice as an artist. And that's really what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on some of the base level stuff that you can do now to start that career path of a creative entrepreneur. Again, artists are business owners. So it's really important that you early on start assigning value to your work. There's a couple of different ways that you begin assigning value to your work, but when it comes down to it, we all are trying to eventually, pay our rent, earn enough to be able to feed ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves. And the way that we start assigning value is by thinking of the time and experience that we have. That's not just time spent actually producing the work, but that's also time spent learning and practicing. Not everything that we create is going to be a final product that we put out into the world. That's what I mean by practicing. But there's also a lot of time that is invested in learning new skills. That like 15 minutes that you might spend on YouTube watching videos on photography techniques or drawing techniques or how to write, that time is going to have some sort of monetary value attached to it. Might not be right now, but in the future it will. And so it's really good to have, at least in the back of your mind, a sort of general idea of how much time you are spending learning and upgrading your skills. And at any given time, those skills are going to be what helps determine the value of your work. Plus, as Carolyn noted, if you're a photographer, you need a camera at least, and potentially film or a, tablet or a laptop or, some sort of device if you're working in digital photography to help you with the editing and processing of your photos. For a visual artist, that might also include things like brushes, pencils, paper, canvases. If you're working in the fabric arts, that would be, the telas that you use. It would be thread and needle. It'll be all of the different forms of equipment and supplies that you might need to produce your work. All of that is an investment. So really try to track how much money and how much time you are spending on your craft. The sooner you start thinking about this and the sooner you start keeping records of this, the easier it's going to be for you to start assigning a value to your work. So, another question for you. What are you good at? What are your strengths as an artist? Take a minute to think about it. Feel free to put it in the chat, but I really want you to start thinking about this now. What are you good at? And what are your strengths as an artist? What are you bringing to the table? Also, does anyone have any questions so far or comments? I think I know your strengths, but Angie, what would you define as one of your strengths? What are you good at?
I am equally as good as being bad at being human. Yep. I do my best to be a good human, but I'm very bad at it sometimes. Skills wise, like, are we talking more about, how can I put it, as an artist? Oh my God, I don't like talking about myself. We just had this conversation earlier too. Um, I don't know. Oh my God, what do you think? I don't know.
I would say that one of your strengths as an artist is that you bring people together through your art.
Oh, thank you.
I mean,
I guess.
yeah, like reading and knowing your poetry, that would be, I think, one of your strengths. Erica in the chat wrote, I am good at writing raw and real and on hard topics. My strengths are that I meet deadlines. Yeah, I have had the privilege of seeing that already. Thank you for sharing that, Erica. This question is really meant to get you thinking about, where your sort of purpose is in your art, right? Where you hope it will take you, and what are the things that you know are already working for you. Um, Navarro in the chat, all of us have the great skill of procrastination, but honestly, a strength or asset of mine is being meticulous. Yeah, that is definitely a strength. Attention to detail, being meticulous, that can be an asset and it can be something that will help you as you produce artwork, whether that be for yourself or for other people. I think it's also really important. Oh, yes, Carolyn, you raised your hand.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I agree with Angie that I don't really care to talk about myself or say what my strengths are, but I can just say that other people have said about me is as far as photography goes, a friend complimented me and said that I have like a documentary style way about how I photograph. And I really appreciated that compliment, because I guess that is like how I shoot. And then I'm very organized. I would say
Okay.
that's another asset.
That's great. That's great to hear. And, I can also reinforce that too, because I've had the privilege of seeing your work. I definitely see that as a skill and a strength that you have. And it looks like Abraham agrees as well. Angie, did you raise your hand?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna agree with both of you guys. And yeah, like I think we've mentioned it. Well, I've mentioned it before that like for your page, I'm such a fan of your page. Where I'm like, wow, she creates like great content. I love it so much. But yeah, anyways, I was just agreeing, praising. Sorry, I'll mute myself now. Bye.
Thank you, Angie. Yeah. You know, we, I mean, all of you who are in the program, we selected you for a particular reason, and we did ask to see your artwork. So there is that. We see the strengths already within you, and we are very happy to have you as part of this program. You do all have a particular set of skills. And, not to get too Liam Neeson about it, but, those skills can definitely benefit our organization in a certain way. But beyond that, I think it's also really valuable for all of you to also recognize that one of your unique strengths that each one of you have is that your stories are not the type of stories that have historically been told. That's also a strength. That's one of the reasons why we are here as an organization and why we are supporting you. So that's also something that you should really keep in mind. Your stories are unique, all of you, and all of you have something that you are actually adding within the larger world of the arts through your practice. So don't forget that. That's very valuable for you to remember, especially as you start to develop your brand. That is going to be something that you can actually incorporate into your storytelling of your brand. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So, on that, right? You are creating a brand, and while it's okay to, develop like a pen name, or an alias, or if you want to use uh yes, I am hyping you up just a little bit. But if you want to use your government name as part of your brand, that is absolutely okay. You can also use a pseudonym, a pen name. You can use like a company name as well. But ultimately, your name is your brand, right? If you embrace the person that you are through your name, whichever one that might be that you choose to use, it is going to be your brand. It's going to be the reason why people will search you out because there will be a value associated with your name because of the story and because of the background that it reflects. On that particular note, though, you need to treat it with respect, right? Treat your name with respect. Give it the place, honor it. It all has a value is ultimately what I'm trying to say. Also, we were really harping on this a lot at the beginning with all of you, but it's very important that you finish your projects, right? Be on time and reliable, be consistent. That is actually a big part of building a brand. The more you post on social media, the more frequently you do that, if you do it on a schedule, the more your work is going to be seen. And again, that is going to reinforce people's trust of your brand, right? They're going to begin trusting you as an artist because you are consistent and because you are reliable. It's also valuable to always produce at your best, right? Push yourself, constantly grow, constantly build on those skills that you already have. Again, each one of you has a unique story to tell. There's nothing that you have that hasn't, already been told, but you have that unique perspective of you, right? There is a common phrase out there. There's nothing new under the sun. But what is the one thing that we all have that is going, in our favor? It's the fact that our brains are incorporating information in its own way. That is the one thing that is not under the sun. literally speaking, that has not already been seen, right? So if you want to think of it in that way, in that semi-abstract way, that is part of the thing that is your like skill, right? Your strength, your talent, the thing that you have going for you. And as you develop that particular set of skills to continue telling that story, you want to always be producing at that level. And last but not least, don't treat it as a hobby or a side hustle. If you are going to turn this into a career, if you really actively want to be a working artist, as much as you can, really embrace it and have that be your primary. I mean, maybe not right away your primary source of income because it takes time to build that, but really have that be your primary reason for existing for at least a little while. Don't treat it as you would a hobby. Hobbies are things that you can pick up and kind of put down for, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and then return to it. A side hustle, it might feel like a side hustle at first, but if you're constantly doing things and, taking actions to support your primary mode of expression, whether that be working within, like as a writer, for example, if you're working for like a newspaper or someone's blog, or if you're a copy editor, it might not be the primary thing that you want to do as like, say, a poet, but it's still within the field, right? And as things develop in your professional life as an artist, you can turn that sort of side hustle feeling into the primary hustle, and then everything else becomes just a way to support that. So always value that. Value your artistry. Constantly be working to up that game and, produce always at your best. Um, I don't know if I can begin pronouncing that, Navor, but I'm glad that you have a pen name that is, everyone's name combined already. Right on. Um, and folks call you by your IG name. I mean, yeah, if that ends up being actually your brand, then, go ahead and embrace that, Carolyn, because that's how people will, ultimately begin associating you with your work. Um, you know, it doesn't hurt that it's, maybe like not obviously your direct legal name. That's not a bad thing necessarily because there's certain legal reasons why you may not want to use your legal name as your business name. But I'll explain that in a moment. Does anyone have any questions or comments though before I move on? I feel like most of this is just kind of like basic tips, again, to sort of hype you up, but it will start to get a little bit more complicated. So again, if you need me to repeat myself or explain a little bit more, please let me know. So, like I was saying, sometimes there is a reason why you don't want to use your legal name, especially if you're going to be incorporating your business. You can run as a sole proprietorship. Corporations are just sort of like these abstract entities that for tax and legal reasons, they exist to help keep you as an individual kind of protected so that your assets, your actual earnings are protected under certain circumstances. And one of the ways in which you can incorporate your business is to operate as a single owner, sole proprietorship. This can be kind of flexible. It basically requires you filing a doing business as form with whoever is your local municipality. If you live in the city of LA, you can get a business license with your legal name, right? You can also get it with a business name. It's always good to go down the route of, actually filling out forms and begin filing paperwork to incorporate in some form or another. But it can be, like I said, just as simple as you using your legal name and doing business under that legal name. But again, there's going to be reasons why you may not want to do that. And one of the things about being a sole proprietorship is that all the profits, everything that you earn goes back to you, the business owner. And your personal income, as in like the taxes of that personal income, are linked to your business's profits and expenses. So, you might have heard it, things are a tax write-off. People save receipts so that they can, when they do their taxes, they either end up using them as a tax write-off, or people will often complain about having to owe taxes because they didn't pay enough. That's where this kind of exists, right? Under the single owner sole proprietorship. One of the drawbacks about that is, that there is personal liability. So if a person, say, isn't happy with the services that you provide or a product that you sell them, the individual, the business owner will be personally liable for either the taxes, the debts, or any kind of like legal action that might come up from that. So you need to be careful if you're going to go down this one because your personal assets are accessible to creditors. If you end up pulling out a business loan and you're not able to pay it, you may, at some point need to pay it back by even like selling a house or selling a vehicle, those kinds of things. So that's one of the drawbacks of being a sole proprietor is that you are also the person responsible for all the debts. In terms of funding opportunities, any kind of business loans that you get are based on your personal credit worthiness. So if you have good credit, you could probably still get a good business loan. Um, but again, you are the individual that is responsible for that loan being paid back. You could also, if you go this route, have better access to crowdsource money, right? If you create a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter for something, you do have direct access to it. You don't kind of have to have a separate bank account, although it is always going to be a good practice to have a separate bank account for business expenses. The same goes with grants. You can also apply to individual artist grants if you are a sole proprietor. That sometimes can get a little bit dicey if you go the other route, which is forming a limited liability corporation. Limited liability corporations, are kind of what it implies in the name. They're for protecting your investment in the business. That's why they work really well for individuals and for member-based organizations. So it could be things like co-ops or co-founded businesses where you go in with a partner. But again, they also work for individuals. A single member LLC is very similar to a sole proprietorship. So again, all the earnings that a business makes as an LLC, that can be paid out to the owner of the company. This, however, does require more paperwork. So you do need to keep in mind that you need to have a really good handle on, just organizing yourself with administrative stuff. There will be a lot more paperwork that you need to file every year to maintain a corporation. Not as much as a sole proprietorship, depending on how far you go with the incorporation. Also, if you have a multi-member LLC, like a co-op, you do have to split the profits with your partners, at least, according to any kind of contracts that you have. That's where it can get kind of dicey if you're going into business with like, say, family, or if you go into business with friends. You want to make sure that it's always with people that you really trust and that will be good about actually splitting the profits that you might earn. Also, uh, LLC is mostly limited to business assets. There are some cases where your personal assets could potentially be things that creditors could go after if you fail to pay a loan or something. But that's only going to be accessible if a part of that is used for business operations. So, like, let's say you're operating out of a spare bedroom, right, within your personal home. In that case, that's the value of that spare bedroom out of the value of the entire home. That's something that a creditor could potentially go after. That's why, again, keeping records is very important because if you are able to prove that, say, the rent that you're paying on a studio space is separate from, your home, that's where you are able to say, like, no, you can't go after my home, but you can, get whatever it is being used at my studio. So, there's obviously a lot of different legal things, and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant, but these are things that I have learned in the whole process that I went through to start DSTL Arts and things that I've continued to learn over the many, many years now that I've been doing this. As far as funding goes, the more members that you have in an LLC, the more you increase your chances for getting loans because it's a collective credit score that banks will be able to look at. There are also some grants and some fellowships that you could go for, but you might also find, that there are certain things that are restricted because you're, organized as an LLC as opposed to as an individual artist. So, a couple of things to keep in mind. If you do decide to go down the co-op route, in the handout here, I actually provided you all with a sample of co-op agreements that I drafted up many years ago, that I have since updated. And these are just kind of like the beginning of what you could use if you do want to create a co-op, a cooperative business with members. And it's not always going to be to your benefit to start off with, um, start your practice as an artist as a co-op. But if it's going to make your life easier, then you may want to go down that route. So that's why I'm providing you with this information. Um, and no, I can't claim the title of lawyer and accountant, but I get by with the little things that I've learned over the many, many, many years that I've done this. So some of you I know in having conversations with you are also very much about the community. And I think that that's great. And I personally love the fact that we have such a strong group of artists that are working with DSTL Arts who support their community and the community that we try to build. So for the socially minded business owner, there are some options that you could potentially explore. Now, if you do end up incorporating as a sole proprietor or as an LLC, you can potentially seek out B Corp certification. A benefits corporation, if I remember correctly, that's what the B stands for. Basically is like a certification that you get from an outside organization, from the B Lab. The B Lab itself is a nonprofit organization, and they set the standards for positive social and environmental impact. So it's not exactly like you're becoming a nonprofit, but with this certification, you can signal to certain entities like the city of LA or the county of LA, or even to your business, your customers, that you are a for-profit business, but you have a structure that really supports either the environment or social justice causes. So that is a potential thing that you can get, in addition to other certifications that include things like being a woman-owned business, a person of color-owned business. There's different certifications that will help you, in some ways, have an advantage when bidding on certain contracts. For the purposes of getting the B Corp certification, though, you do have to be legally incorporated. You can't just be operating, like, as just an individual. So you have to actually sign all the paperwork that says, hey, I'm a corporation in the state of California or wherever you reside. There also needs to be a set of governance documents, bylaws that say, this is how the business operates. This is how we work with our stakeholders and investors. It's not going to be just the business owner by themselves who is operating the company. So you do have to have some sort of structure where you have people that sit on a board of directors that help manage the organization, the business in this particular case. There are questions to ask yourself if you want to certify. You need to demonstrate to the public that your business is committed to social and environmental justice. And so that is a requirement if you want to get that certification. There are some opportunities that might actually increase because you have the certification. Um, Certification also is not free, unfortunately. So that is another thing that you need to think about. Um, so it might not be the best option if you're still a really tiny operation. And I always get asked, what about starting a nonprofit? DSTL Arts is a fully formed 501c3 nonprofit, and it cost us about $1,000 to just simply register as a nonprofit in both the state of California and with the IRS. The thing about being a fully formed nonprofit, though, is that every single year we have to maintain that status. And it did require working with a lawyer to develop our bylaws. And we also had to work with a board of directors, and we have to continue to have a board of directors that helps with the governance of the organization. So documentation is really, really important for a nonprofit. And there are specific types of 501c3 organizations that can exist. So you working as an individual artist may or may not fit in one of these categories. The way that nonprofits are classified, they have to be charitable, religious, scientific, public safety testing, um, literary, educational, or an other type of organization that includes also things like churches and religions. They can also be 501c3 nonprofits. Certain types of foundations can be nonprofits. Certain kinds of political organizations can be nonprofits. And of course, there are the typical welfare, civic leagues, social clubs, labor organizations, and other types of business leagues like chambers of commerce. Those can also be nonprofits, 501c3 nonprofits. The thing is that the primary purpose has to be charitable, which means that no individual can actually make any significant amount of money off of the profits, quote unquote, that the nonprofit might generate. Every year there may be like a, surplus of money that isn't spent during the program year of a nonprofit or during the fiscal year. So that money can't be turned around and, given as a big bonus to the founder of the nonprofit. That is essentially what it means to be a for-profit. The for-profit means that the founder gets to have all that money. The non-profit means that that money is instead reinvested in the community, in the charitable functions of the organization. And with a nonprofit, there is a lot of diversity in terms of how you're able to fund it. So it can come from private donations, from charging for your services. It comes potentially from grants and other fellowships, and a lot of other different ways in which nonprofits can earn money. So, people get it confused a lot. They think that a nonprofit like DSTL Arts can't make a profit, but actually we can. The key difference is that we're instead using that money to continue the services that we provide to the community. Any questions there? Yep, designer chairs, Abraham. Exactly. It's an office supply, I swear. So here's a very important question to ask yourself, especially if you're going to incorporate. What does the world need? What can you offer as an artist entrepreneur that others can't? What do you love to do? So, right now, as a simple question, yeah, the world does need kindness, you know? And I think that, like I said, there's a lot of you in the program right now who are very community focused. And I love that about all of you, is that all of you really do appreciate working with community and within community. But I guess my question to you is, does that mean that you want to form a nonprofit? Because if you do want to form a nonprofit, I'm not going to lie to you, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work. But that doesn't mean that you can't be an artist and still do things for the community, right? So that's what this first question is really about. How do you want to approach your incorporation? How do you want to approach your business, right? What does the world need? The world does need a lot of coffee, but in addition to that, what can you as an artist offer that others can't? This is kind of going now into the skills, right? What are some of the skills that you have as an artist entrepreneur that other people do not have? This is a very good moment to really assess what it is that you are bringing to the table. And lastly, what do you love to do? Because ultimately, that's going to really help you stay passionate about your artwork and about the things that you're doing as a business owner. So really ask yourselves this question. What is it that you really enjoy doing as part of your practice? If it's doodling, then that should be some of the things that you bring to the table is your love and passion for doodling. If it's going to be more doing, say, like fine art that is incorporating oils and, the techniques of the great masters from the Renaissance, like that's great. And that is something that is also going to be a valuable asset that you bring to the table because only you can do it through your own eyes, through your own vision. So I want to make sure that as you're thinking about this right now, begin making a list of words that describe your artwork and your vision for it. Again, what are you good at and what do you love to do? And you can start dropping some of those things in the chat if you want. I do recommend that you keep this handy though. So write it maybe on a sheet of paper afterwards. Um, you'll have obviously an opportunity to revisit some of these questions in the bigger worksheet that I uploaded earlier. But I'll give you, all right. Thank you, Erica. I love to impact others and helping others know they are not alone and healing can be done. Excellent. Thank you, Angie. I like making people see their importance in the world. Excellent. Thank you, Julie. Transformative, critical, empowering. Excellent. Does anyone have any questions so far? No? All right. Well, I really encourage you all to continue thinking about this because it's going to be very useful, especially as we go on to talk about branding. Angie added, I like being able to connect people to resources they may need. Yeah, Angie enjoys being a bridge, a coordinator, even. Thank you, Angie. So, as you think about these things, remember, artists are business owners. And the minute that you start to post your work, you become a business owner. You become a type of entrepreneur. Part of the reason why is because, through the promotion of yourself, you're also telling your story, right? But there's other things that you can have, other tools that you can use to help to promote yourself. So at the bare minimum, have a website. Even a basic landing page can go a long way. And what I mean by a landing page is just a simple page on a website. It could be like WordPress or even Tumblr, if people are still using Tumblr. Like it could be just something as simple as like a photo of you, your bio, and then links to your social media or an email address and, a I don't know, like a web store where you're selling your work, right? Something as simple as that can really help to propel your story. It's a way for you to have a presence that is, in a lot of ways, a reliable presence, more reliable than even social media can be sometimes. Social media, of course, is a tool. There are a lot of reasons why people want to avoid it, and I think that it's very valid, especially if it becomes something that is detrimental to your mental health and something that can begin to affect your, inspiration and your productivity. But it is good to engage in social media and use it as a community platform. And don't feel like you have to use every single social media account out there. Use the one that really speaks to your audience the most. For some people, it's Instagram because of it being kind of like the original image-based platform. There's also things like Slack, or there are other things that maybe work better for creating community, like Discord or even Patreon, right? Those can be considered social media platforms that allow you to tell your story. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Julie. Zach Fox's website. She thought it was so clever. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Um, if you do have samples of websites that you like, bookmark them. You know, share them with other people here in the program because we will actually begin talking about how to build a website and having examples of good, very well built websites is always going to help. And yes, as a member of the DSTL Arts staff, yes, we do generally dislike TikTok. It's not our favorite platform. The cheapest host is going to be always the free one. Um, you can begin with a something like a WordPress account. WordPress offers a free version, and from there, if you feel like you want to build on it, you can. Of course, building onto a free website is always going to cost you some level of money and some degree of like coding usually. But there is that. There is also the web platform that Distill Arts uses is squareup.com. You do get a free website when you create a Square account, which is something that we'll again, go over in more detail in a future seminar. But find the one that you feel works best for you to start, and then from there you can always build it out. Um, Again, WordPress, especially if you're a writer and you want to do things that are more blog focused, I would say is probably one of the better platforms to go with. If you do intend on having things like a web store in the future, though, you may want to look into something that has that functionality first, and then you begin building the website, like Square as an example. What's that, Angie? Yes, I do dislike it. We all dislike it.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. Carolyn gets it. Carolyn also does not like tickety tockety. Um, it's also worth it too, in the form of storytelling, right? To invest in physical marketing materials. Having a business card is still useful. I still go to events and I still often give out business cards, and we do give out flyers because going to events and doing the real world networking type of thing, it kind of solidifies people's sort of expectations of you as a business. So do invest in physical marketing materials. It really does help, makes a difference. On the topic of branding, branding is more than just a name too. It's obviously going to be a logo and a catchy business name, but there's also other things to really help tell your story. And that's going to be something like your mission. There's a difference between a mission statement and a vision statement. That's something that people sometimes will, kind of confuse to a certain degree. Each one of them does have a place in the business world. A mission statement is usually going to be for the public and also internal purposes. It's kind of like the statement that tells people why you exist. You could think of it as sort of like this right here, right? Fill in the blanks. My company blank exists to blank. A vision statement is about where you see your business kind of building and operating. It can be time sensitive. Um, it can be just more esoteric, right? And yes, you are getting these slides. I'll upload the PDF in Google Classroom. Maybe not tomorrow, but definitely soon. But a vision statement is something that is almost always internal only. So it's something that you use for you and maybe your team once you start to build a team. It really speaks to what your core values are, right? And these are the values that guide your approach to every part of your practice. This is maybe not just going to be about how you approach, hiring people, like with the common diversity, equity, and inclusion thing that has become a buzzword, that is obviously going to be important. But the values that you express to your community are going to be the things that ultimately make people feel like they have a connection with you, right? So it is going to transcend not just the way that you structure your business, but also the way that you interact with the public. If you show by your actions that you really value the people that you work with, that is going to come across, and that will be a reason why people continue coming back to you again and again and again. Also, your audience are part of your brand. These are the real reason why you are creating the work that you are creating. You are meeting a need that they have. Remember, artists live both within the necessities realm and the commodities realm. We fulfill a lot of roles for people in society. So if you value your audience and you show them time and again that you are there to reflect their needs and their interests, they will constantly come back and they will always support you. And that is always something very valuable to remember about your name, right? That's why you treat your name with respect. That's why you treat your brand with respect. Really honor it and its place in this world. As an example of a mission statement, here is, of course, the DSTL Arts one, right? DSTL Arts is a nonprofit arts mentorship organization that, and this is very important, we inspire, teach, and hire emerging artists from underserved communities. You see, the mission statement for DSTL Arts was specifically structured this way to tell people what it is that we do, to demonstrate who we exist for, and ultimately, to give people a sense of why we exist, right? We exist because we're hoping to serve people from underserved communities as a nonprofit. And we're not just any nonprofit, we're a nonprofit arts mentorship organization. So all of those words were specifically selected to reflect our vision for not only ourselves as an organization, but also our community. And these words were selected to always remind us of why our programs exist. Everything that we do always falls back to, are we inspiring people? Are we teaching people? And, are we hiring in not just the sense of actually as part of our staff, but also teaching the skills to get people hired, That's another reason why we offer this particular set of seminars, is because we want to give you the tools to really be part of the creative workforce. So you can't really answer the question, what does the world need, without knowing who the world is. So I'd like you to take a minute right now and for yourself, define who your ideal patron, customer, or audience member is. And this is your opportunity to get as detailed as you can. Think about their age, think about their race or ethnicity, think about their gender. Where do they live? In what region of the world are they living? What is potentially their socioeconomic class? What are their interests? What are their hobbies? What other organizations are they affiliated with? Those are all going to be very valuable for you to know. So you can brainstorm this for, like about a minute. Again, this is going to be something that you can continue doing as part of what we're going to call the homework for this session. But have this in mind now. And if you already know, go ahead and put it in the chat. Anyone have any questions so far? All right. Let's go ahead and continue on. So getting to know your audience is very important, right? And here is where you want to do some demographic research. And there's different ways in which you can do demographic research. One of the ways that you can think about who benefits from your work or who your audience is to actually do a community needs assessment. The community needs assessments are going to basically be things like surveys or roundtables. You can form an advisory group, where you have people that you trust kind of giving you input on how you approach your art and the types of projects that you bring to the community. These are going to be ways in which you can show, not only for the sake of your larger audience, but even for funders, that you are working with the community to fulfill a need, right? The market needs of one community are not always going to be the same needs of another community, but sometimes there is overlap and there's opportunities there where you can bring communities together. And the only way you can know that is if you take the time to survey people, talk to people, have them inform aspects of your business. And another way in which you can be sure that you are serving the community is by doing what's called a feasibility assessment. This is where you ask yourself questions that kind of reflect on the answers that your community is giving you in the survey that you use with them. Can you meet the needs of the community with your art? Is maybe, an area of your skill set uh, needing some reinforcement from another person? Does that mean that you can find maybe, I don't know, a mental health counselor that can work with you in offering a workshop series? Is there, I don't know, maybe like a screen printer that can work with you while you do the creative writing aspect of a workshop series? The screen printer can uh, maybe create the artwork for a chapbook that you want to put together with the group of people who are part of the workshop, right? There's different ways in which you can sort of reflect back on what the community wants and needs and how you can fulfill that need. If you do have the infrastructure to provide a service or to produce a product, great. That's where also the feasibility assessment comes in too, because then you can say, yeah, that's perfect. I can apply for funding from, say, the Poets and Writers magazine, and that particular grant can pay for my traveling costs to go and do a workshop with people on a reservation in Northern California. You see, so there's different ways in which a feasibility assessment can help you strategize the way that you end up serving your community. It's also very important to just think about how funding works, right? You always want to be honest about the value of your work at all times, not just with yourself, but with others, especially if you're going to start looking for funding from outside sources. I generally like to tell people um don't undervalue your work, right? Your time is very valuable. And if someone is going to hire you to teach or hire you to design something or hire you to do a photo shoot, at the bare minimum, charge $50 an hour. Because that $50 an hour not only is for the time spent actually engaging in the practice with someone, engaging in the service, but that's also going to be, a way to cover the time that you spend processing the film or doing the editing on the computer or even traveling, right? So all of those things are things that are very important for you to incorporate into your prices that you quote people. And if it's like, say, a workshop series and you're charging $50 per person to register, you can turn around and say, well, $50 covers maybe 10 people, but then a portion of that covers the other 10 people who are part of the workshop series. You see, so there's always going to be a way for you to be able to say, this is how I'm providing a service, and this is how you are supporting that service. It's maybe going to be something that you can struggle with at first, but if you create a realistic budget for operating as a business, those kinds of things are going to become a lot easier for you to tell and explain to people that, this is just the cost of doing business in LA, for example. Also, when it comes to costs, never sell your rights, not completely. Your artwork belongs to you. Whatever you create belongs to you. You are the copyright owner. And unless if a contract specifically says that you are giving up your rights as the creative, that intellectual property can serve you again and again and again in the future if you retain the rights to your work. So, as much as possible, always ask for a contract or a licensing agreement that says that you retain your intellectual property. Anything that you create is going to have a value at some level. So really be comfortable with saying, you know what? I won't just give you the negatives. I won't just give you the, digital files, but, we can fill out a form where you can use it for your personal use. And if you end up making money off of it, then I deserve a royalty. So those are going to be things, those are going to be conversations that you will want to have in the future. And again, in a future seminar, we'll go into that a little bit more. So that way you can feel more comfortable having that conversation. But I really encourage you now to really be aware of that. Be aware that your intellectual property, any artwork that you create, has value, and it will have a value that can really only grow as you grow within the art world as an entrepreneur. So, does anybody have any questions so far about any of these things that I've mentioned? Thank you, Abraham, for dropping a video there. What is the video that you
It's a song about costing versus people thinking how much something costs.
Oh,
But
okay.
again, copyrights. So just watch it, guys.
Yeah. You're welcome, Erica. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. It also pays to be the brand with a plan. A business plan is going to help you if you do decide in the future to go for like business loans. There's also certain types of organizations that are trying, at least here in LA, to help support people of color who are entrepreneurs and who are starting to really kind of grow their businesses. So a business plan for those types of nonprofits or B corporation banks, they do sometimes require that you have a business loan. So I'm sorry, a business plan before they give you a business loan or a business grant. So definitely begin thinking about the business plan as not just a tool for you to get funding, but also as a thing that helps guide you as you begin expanding as an organization, as a business owner, and in your services. So it can begin with really defining your services, and there's a difference between artist projects and contracted services. As artists, I'm pretty sure all of you will have your own personal projects that you will constantly be working on. These are going to be things that allow you to experiment, that allow you to generate an audience. You know, they're going to be things that you are more passionate about doing. Artist projects can also be community-based and community-led projects in a very similar way in which things like our Conchas y Café or our artistic zine kind of came to be. Even Art Block Zine started off as a community-led project, something that was brought to us by a couple of students in the mentorship program when we first started it. So those things can fall under artist projects in terms of like a category. Contracted services are things where you will actually be, paid to fulfill a service, to fulfill a need. So it might be like speaking fees if you're going to go speak somewhere, if you're going to do a presentation at a library. It could be a class or a workshop series. In those types of situations, you would be hired by somebody to perform a service, usually as an independent contractor, especially if you're self-employed. Some places might actually hire you as an employee as a teaching artist. But depending on that particular arrangement, those would fall under contracted services. This can also be like where somebody might hire you to like complete a painting because they're a collector, or it could be, a person that hires you to do a quinceañera as the photographer. So, there's different ways in which those sort of services might uh, kind of come up for you. It's also very good to diversify your revenue. So don't just expect to be, earning a living off of, artist projects. While all of us would love to be able to do that, the reality is that in this capitalist world, we need to have a diverse revenue source. So it could be fee for services, if you are going to be doing like I said, certain types of contracted services. If you're going to be organizing workshops where you charge people, those could be fee for services. There's of course the grants and fellowships that can pop up every now and then merchandise. Everybody, I think, kind of generally understands how merchandise works. T-shirts, tote bags, mugs, the everyday little things that we can put our artwork on. Those are things that will help us diversify our revenue. Of course, you do need to think about how you're distributing merchandise and also the cost of not just the production, but also the shipping of the merchandise. Those types of things do need to be incorporated into the prices of merchandise. And on that, there are some particular tools that I think work really well. I did mention this earlier, but if you're going to build a website that incorporates e-commerce, so meaning you're going to be selling and shipping stuff, um, I definitely recommend Square. This is the one that we use through DSTL Arts, like I said, and they pretty much work with everything. They're actually removing PayPal as a way for people to make payments, but they do accept Apple Pay, Google Pay, and all the other credit cards. Um, and if you know that that is a direction you want to go in, then I definitely recommend that you begin with a website, a web platform that takes payments, that has e-commerce incorporated into it, and then the website will follow. That's why I personally like Square, because you get a free website to start. If you want to start making upgrades to it, then you can pay extra annually to be able to make those upgrades, but the functionality of it in the free form is actually pretty solid. You can also do things like print on demand for things like books or chapbooks. You can also do zines and other types of art prints, posters, all of that stuff. We use Blurb as our print on demand service for most of our stuff. And there's also Printful, which I actually used to do the DSTL Arts tote bags and t-shirts. The quality is pretty good, and it also connects with Square. So that's part of the reason why I went with Printful. Drop shipping is a term that refers to basically you getting your merchandise, sending it to a warehouse, and then that warehouse takes care of shipping stuff for you. They do it for a fee. You could think of it kind of like how Amazon functions. Amazon is a drop shipper. So, that's one way in which you can distribute merchandise. There's also, of course, the direct sales. So if you go to events, trade shows, book festivals, zine fests, all of those things, that's direct sales. Um, you obviously pay the fee to be part of the event, but you can also organize your own events where you sell your merch at your own art shows, at your own performances, all of that. And then there's consignment, where you work with local bookstores or other small businesses that might be interested in selling your merchandise on your behalf. In those particular cases, it's very good to have a consignment contract. So that way it's very clear of, who gets paid what amount and for how long they hold on to your merchandise. If you're interested in consignment, I do have a consignment contract that I can share with all of you. But in the end, we're kind of running out of time, so we're just going to speed through these last couple of slides. But do ask yourself, what are you good at, right? What are the things that you are able to do that can translate into other fee for services or merchandise, right? What are the things that you're already creating that you can potentially monetize to get you started down that path, that path? You're good at crying? Oh, Angie. I mean, if maybe you could be like a person's support, emotional support friend, maybe you can monetize that. Um, but yeah, again, ask yourself this question on a regular basis. What are you good at, and what can you turn that into? It's also going to be, I think, beneficial for you to make a list of products and potential services that you want to provide to your audience. Sometimes your audience doesn't always know what they want. So if there's a particular thing that you want to do, if there's like I don't know, a message that you want to spread, that's also something that's valuable. And that's also something that will help you guide your business plan as you develop it. So do incorporate that as part of your list. As I said earlier, I created this sort of worksheet, this kind of template that you can use to start writing a business plan. A lot of the things that you see here are things that we already covered in the slide deck. This is part of the PDF that is, up of the slide deck. I also uploaded it in the chat earlier by itself, but you can print this out and just use it to take notes, right? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? Who is your audience? Who are you hoping to work with and for? What are your competitors too? I think it's also really good for you to know who is also in this space that we call the arts. Sometimes that's an opportunity. Sometimes it's just something for you to be aware of. So that way you're not overly copying or overly saturating the services that someone else is providing. Also, what are the resources and assets that you already have? What do you have now? What do you still need? Who are existing partners that you know that you can work with? A vision statement, again, is going to help you sort of reflect back your ideologies and the things that you hope to achieve with your brand. And then the mission statement is going to be something that directly communicates to your audience, to your funders, what it is that you're doing, right? What it is that you're hoping to kind of achieve for the community. A positioning statement, we didn't really go over this too much, but it ultimately is the answer to the question, what are you good at? And what does the world need? You're answering those two questions ultimately in the positioning question and positioning statement, excuse me. The values are pretty straightforward. You just kind of list what your internal values are, your core beliefs as an organization, as an artist, as a business owner. The promises is really about what you're hoping to always fulfill for the person that is consuming your products or your services. And then brand attributes will help you later when we start talking about the way that you construct your logos and the way that you start to tell your story through social media and other marketing means. So this right now is something that you maybe don't have to worry about too much, but it will be useful for you to start filling this out in the coming months. And then if you already have kind of like a name for your brand, you can list it here. But feel free to use this as a space to sort of brainstorm other names that you might want to go by as an artist, or for the purposes of incorporating. Because like I said before, there may be instances where you do not want to use your legal name, which is fine. But, keep in mind that sometimes having like a pen name that is, kind of goes over people's head might not help you either. So definitely play around with potential brand names that you can use as part of your arts practice. So your homework for this particular seminar is ultimately to complete the branding brainstorm worksheet, the thing that we just went over, and start crafting a business plan. Just by filling out that form, you will have a lot of the elements that go into a business plan. And if you want to share that with us, you're more than welcome to share that with us. And after this particular session, we will have in about 2 weeks a sort of follow-up session where if you had questions or if things maybe were unclear during the seminar now, you'll be able to log on with me on Zoom on a Thursday and we'll discuss it. That's also a moment too, a time where you can bring your worksheet if you want to bring the worksheet and kind of talk through some of the stuff that you fill out. In the end, I want to leave you with this. The first quote comes from BC Forbes. Yes, the guy that founded the magazine Forbes. He is quoted as saying, "If you don't drive your business, you will be driven out of business." And Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the famous German poet, playwright, and novelist, also wrote, "What is not started will never get finished." So, all of you are on this journey now with us as part of the Poet Artist Development Program. We're very happy to have you here in the program, and we are excited to see your artwork already starting to develop into something that you could potentially turn into a product. It's maybe feels like you're cheapening your artwork by calling it that, but in the end, we, like I said, do live in a capitalist society, and the thing that you bring that no one else brings is your unique experiences. And the fact that you are now on this path, you have started your journey as a creative entrepreneur, and it's up to you now, really, to finish it. Keep going down that path, and you will always have us here to support you. So I, want to encourage all of you to just, keep some of these things in mind. You can reach out to us directly if you have any questions. And again, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a Zoom session that'll be more like an office hours session where you can join me on Zoom and ask questions about the professional development seminar and all of the content that we talked about today. Either way, we will be having more of these seminars on a monthly basis. This is the first of about 8 that we're going to be doing total. And um, we'll be building on the same skills that we've been discussing this entire time. So, yeah. Does anyone have any final questions or parting thoughts before we close out tonight's session?
I just want to say that thank you so much for your continued support, Luis, Abraham, Angie. It's awesome being part of DSTL Arts.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rosie. It's a pleasure to have you as part of DSTL Arts too. It
We
really is.
love you, Dr. Rosie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love you guys too. De corazón.
De todo corazón.
Mhm.
All right. So, yeah, if no one has any final questions, sitting with the possibilities, feeling more motivated and encouraged. That's great, Navor. I do hope that you did find today's session encouraging and useful. I know that it is a lot of information to try and cover within an hour and a half session. Obviously, we went over a little bit, but again, we're here for you. We definitely, it's part of our mission statement. It's one of the reasons why I started Distill Arts, because people like us don't often get this type of information, and we're almost never encouraged to be the artists that we know we are. So I'm very grateful to have all of you here tonight, even the people who joined in on Instagram Live and on YouTube and Facebook. I think that the more we can continue to share this information with each other and supporting each other, the more we will benefit as not just a small community here, but as a larger society. So thank you, everyone. I again appreciate all of you being here, and we'll be uploading the recording along with the slide deck in a couple of days to Google Classroom for anybody that wasn't able to follow along now. And then I'll let you all know exactly when the office hours session will be scheduled. So with that, I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.